Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I'm half of your host, Perry Constantine, and unfortunately today this show will only have half a host. As you're all well aware, Derrick Ferguson was my co-host on this show, and it's my sad duty to inform you that he's no longer with us. First thing I'd like to do is to share verbatim what his wife, Patricia, had posted on Derrick's social media. It is with a broken heart that I, Patricia Cabbage Stalk Ferguson, announce the passing of my beloved Derrick Ferguson. Derrick transitioned on April 4th, 2021. There will be a viewing open to the public on April 15th, 2021, from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. at Woodwood Funeral Home, 1 Troy Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, 11213, followed by private service from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Streaming information to follow. Now, I'd like to talk a bit about my history with Derrick and about how much he meant to me. Sorry, this is going to be tough to get through. Around the year 2000 or so, I began writing comic book fan fiction. There was a very active community of shared universe comic book fanfic sites at the time, all associated with a website called Heroes, which was sort of like a CBR or Wizard magazine for the community. Derrick was a very active member of this community, not only as a writer, but also as a reviewer. Now, I had gotten reviews and comments about the work that I had posted up from many different people at that time. It was just the thing you did, right? People would post their stories up and, you'd comment on each other's work and so on and so forth. But Derrick was different. When he chose to review some of my stuff, he had given me some of the most insightful comments that I had ever seen. And as anyone who has read Derrick's reviews can attest, he had a remarkable ability to dissect a work in a way that was both informative and entertaining. Now, I was in my teenage years back then, and as most teenagers, I had a massive ego and, was full of piss and vinegar. Derrick and I initially did not like each other, and we clashed quite a bit. But over the course of about maybe 2 or 3 years, things started to change. As I matured, Derrick and I started to find common ground in our love of movies. And what had started as an initial animosity had quickly transformed into a friendship. And without ever intending to, Derrick had quickly become kind of a mentor to me. We would chat frequently on AOL Instant Messenger, not only about comic books and fan fiction and movies, but also about personal things. I would often come to him for advice on different things. One day, Derrick told me something that kind of surprised me. And then he said, "I'm waiting for you to write a novel." Now, I had been writing fanfic for several years when he told me that, and writing quite prolifically. I'd always dreamed of being a comic book writer or a screenwriter or something along those lines. But I never thought I could be a novelist. That just didn't seem like it was within the realm of possibility. And I told him so. Now, Derrick, of course, he stuck to his guns. He was respectful, but he said that he thought I was wrong. And I followed his advice. I had made a few aborted attempts at writing different novels. They all kind of petered out after a certain number of words. But I finally did manage to produce and publish my first novel, which was Fallen, in 2007. And I asked Derrick if he would write the introduction, and he was very generous. And he did. As the years went on and we became active in publishing our original work, Derrick and I would talk, frequently. It was through Derrick that I became part of the larger New Pulp community, and we were often cheerleaders for each other's work. Derrick had reviewed a few of my books, and he interviewed me many times on his website as part of his Kickin' the Willy Bobo interview series. Several times we had talked about working on projects together, and it just never seemed to quite work out. Now, that had recently begun to change, and we were in the initial stages of working together on a series of Western novels. Since I've started taking art classes and improving my drawing ability, we had also talked about the possibility of, when I was more confident in my abilities, when I felt I was ready, of doing a comic book featuring his Dylan character. Several years back, Derrick and Tom DJ did a podcast called Better in the Dark that focused on movie reviews. And I became a huge fan of that show. I had known Derrick, obviously, and also Tom personally, but that's why I initially listened in. And I kept listening because I really enjoyed hearing what they had to say. In fact, that was the podcast that first introduced me to podcasts. And eventually I decided to do a podcast of my own called The Exploding Typewriter, Pulp Writers on Writing Pulp, which, as you can tell by the title, was all about, writing and pulp fiction, and it didn't last very long, but Derrick was a guest on a few of the episodes. And those episodes that he came on were longer than most. Derrick, he just had that way about him. He was always a lot of fun to talk to with. And I think you all know from listening to this show, it was impossible to have a boring conversation with Derrick. I mean, he had such energy and such bombast that he brought, and such humor and wit, and you couldn't help but have a good time whenever you talked with him. A few years ago, I started the Japan on Film podcast, and initially I just did it by myself. Derrick was the first guest on the show, and he came on to discuss Seven Samurai and the Western remake, Magnificent Seven. He had come on to do another episode, and we talked about the Japanese version of Unforgiven. And he was one of the show's biggest promoters. He would often share links to episodes he liked, and it was around that time that I had the idea of doing a podcast about superhero movies. But I knew that I didn't want to do it by myself. I wanted to have a partner with me. I wanted to have a co-host. And I knew there was no one I would rather do that show with than Derrick. So I came to him with the idea, and he said yes. And that's how Superhero Cinephiles was born. It started as a bi-weekly podcast, but when COVID broke out and I had some more free time in my schedule, we decided to transition to a weekly format. And it was something that I looked forward to doing every week. We often recorded on Thursday mornings here in Japan. And every Thursday I would wake up excited for the chance to talk with Derrick about our pick of the week. And just as he had been doing for years in private, Derrick had introduced me to movies that I never would have thought to watch. And he brought a very wonderful perspective to movies that I had seen before and made me rethink a lot of these movies. Derrick and I had never actually met in person. In fact, one of the frequent jokes I would say is that, Derrick's my best friend that I've never actually met in real life. Several years ago, before I came to Japan, I was supposed to do an interview in New York, and Derrick had graciously offered to host me at his place. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Another job offer had come up at the time, and so I had missed that chance to meet Derrick. I'm not upset that I never got that job, but I am upset that I didn't have that opportunity to go visit him and just hang out with him in person. We had talked a few times about, hopefully being able to find a way to meet up at some point, but it just never came to pass, and it will forever remain one of my biggest regrets. Derrick was more than just a friend. He was a mentor. And in many ways, he was a brother. In fact, when my wife became pregnant, Derrick was one of the first people I told. And because we were hosting this show week after week, and I often look after my daughter in the mornings, which you can probably hear her in the background. She's right next to me now. I would do the show with her. And so Derrick's voice was one of the first voices that my daughter had heard. And as she gets older, I definitely plan on having her listen to these episodes that we did together, and plan to introduce her to his books and his stories, so that I want her to know who her Uncle Derrick was. Last month, we were scheduled to do an episode on Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now, as you know from listening to this show, Derrick and I had often discussed Snyder's movies and his work, and we had talked about the impending Snyder Cut, and we both had, we didn't love those movies, but one of the things that we did love was talking about them. And after all that time, we had both been looking forward to discussing the Snyder Cut, especially after it had been hanging around in the air for so long. But the morning we were supposed to record, I woke up to a message from Derrick saying that he had to postpone the episode because he had to go to the hospital. That turned into an extended stay. We had spoken a few times while he was in the hospital. He was in good spirits, right? He thanked me for my concern. We joked around and stuff like that, but he seemed confident that he'd be able to go home soon. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. It had been about a week, maybe two, since I had heard from Derrick. I'd sent him a message, just kind of checking up on him, just kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, and he didn't respond to it. Now, I just assumed that he was kind of overwhelmed with everything. But in the back of my mind, I had this dark thought that something might have happened, something might have gone wrong. I told myself that I was just being paranoid and that he was fine, but my instincts sadly proved correct. In regards to this show, I'm sure many of you are wondering what's next. That's a normal reaction. I mean, it's obviously something I've been wondering myself. I will say that this is what I want to do right now. All I'm concerned about with right now is honoring Derrick's memory. So in that light, I'm planning to put together a memorial episode. If any of you would like to contribute, I'd like you to please record yourselves, either with video or just audio alone, sharing whatever memories or words you'd like to share about Derrick. Please record it, save it as in an MP3 file or a video format, and pretty much any video format is fine, and send it to the show's email address. That's superherocinefiles@gmail.com. You may want, if it's a large file, which I'm sure most of these will probably be, you would probably want to use a file transfer service. WeTransfer.com is a very good service. You could use that to send the audio. Any doesn't have to be long. Anything you'd like to share about Derrick, please send it in, and I'll put them together and put together an episode. I'd also like to reach out to some other podcast hosts that Derrick and I knew, and to see if we'd be able to schedule, some sort of roundtable or something along those lines. I understand that some of the publishers Derrick had worked with are planning to put together some things as well, and I don't believe his wife has announced any sort of a fund, memorial fund or anything like that. If she does, I will, of course, pass on that information and let you know where you can donate. As for what will happen beyond that memorial episode in regards to this show, honestly, I'm not sure right now. Knowing Derrick, I'm fairly certain he would have wanted this show to continue. He really enjoyed, sharing these movies with other people and kind of introducing people to... I know one of the things he loved doing in general was introducing people to movies they may not have otherwise known much about. I personally would like to continue doing the show, but I don't think I'm capable of doing it on my own. And certainly I would want to take some time before the show continues in any sort of form. But I do want to see it go on in some way. If you would like the show to continue, then please, by all means, let me know. You can do it privately by emailing superherocinephiles@gmail.com, or you can post a public comment on Twitter, on Instagram, or on Facebook. The only other thing left to say is that if you would like to honor Derrick's memory, please go and buy some of his books and stories. His work is available through Pro Se Press, Airship 27, Pulpwork Press, and many more. Just do an Amazon search for his name, and you'll find no shortage of works that I know you will love. I think that's the best way right now. Please don't donate to this show in Derrick's memory. I don't really know Patricia that I've never actually, other than reaching out to her recently, I've never actually spoken to her, so I don't have any way of really providing any funds that come through me to her. So please just go, and like I said already, I don't know of any funds that she's set up or anything like that. So if you want to financially help in any way, I think the best thing you can do is to buy Derrick's books and stories. That's all I really have to say on this subject for now. Other than, I'm going to miss you, Derrick. I love you, buddy. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And again, please send your contributions. If you want to record something for the memorial episode, please send it to superherocinephiles@gmail.com. For any financial support, please go out and purchase Derrick's work. Just search for his name on Amazon, Derrick Ferguson or Derrick L. Ferguson. He's got tons of material out there that you can purchase. Thanks again.